Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader has players navigate the Coronis Expanse, a little chartered piece of space full of opportunity and danger. This universe is brought to life in an isometric CRPG by Owlcat Games, known for excellent world building, rich character depth, and complex combat. For some background, I became a fan of Owlcat after devouring their first game, Pathfinder Kingmaker, but struggled with pacing issues in their second title, Wrath of the Righteous, and never finished it. I'm not a fan of the XCOM style combat choice and have no knowledge at all of the Warhammer universe. The first hour, as expected, was spent in character creation, and it retains Owlcat's complexity where you're making important decisions right away with little hand-holding. This is mostly standard within the genre, and fortunately Rogue Trader is a little less daunting than the Pathfinder games. The narrative starts strong, and the world feels ancient and indifferent. I'm of little consequence to it, at least in the beginning. There's an intriguing premise, and I can already see the depths and gray areas to explore. There's a lot of lore and vocabulary to learn, but the tooltips are concise and helpful. After a few story beats, I hit the first combat encounter, which felt like a good difficulty as the game drip-fed the tutorials and mechanics. In the second hour, I started noticing the audio and how the music, chunky battle sound effects, and atmospheric vibes immersed me in the world. I do have some audio balancing issues between the music, sound effects, and dialogue that I haven't entirely fixed. Speaking of dialogue, the voice acting, when present, is excellent, as is the writing. Nothing is black and white, everyone feels like they have an ulterior motive, and you have to earn your companion's trust and decide when to accept theirs. Unfortunately, the dialogue is only voiced a fraction of the time, and it isn't consistent when it is, which is jarring. Owlcat isn't known for impressive cinematics or detailed character models, but I hope to see some advancements from their previous titles, only because it could do so much to further bring the game to life. I will say they do a great job with detailed backgrounds, lighting, and color schemes to set the mood. The third hour is when I really started getting into a groove. Exploration has opened up and loot has started trickling in. Dialogue options are starting to open up more too, and the game introduces the conviction system where my decisions will impact the story and be reflected in the game world. Owlcat always does an excellent job of bringing back some tiny decision you made or character you helped hours later to make the world feel reactive. I reached level 4, and the leveling system, which was restrained in the early levels, starts to get interesting with many impactful ability choices. I also began to feel like my usual gripes with this type of combat aren't a worry because I have multiple abilities at my disposal even in the early levels, and my attacks aren't missing a frustrating number of times. In the fourth hour, the game is humming along. The pacing is a great mix of story, exploration, and combat, none wearing out their welcome. That's not to say the dialogue is concise though. Conversations can be long and lots to read. More of an epic novel vibe than an action movie vibe. I'm continuing to gain levels and at a good pace. Some feel very powerful, and I unlocked heroic measures. These are like ultimate abilities, and I'm learning how powerful they can be when used correctly. I also faced the first boss, which wasn't tricky mechanically, but it was a decent challenge on normal difficulty. Battles in this game are mostly contained within each encounter, where you throw everything at your enemies to take them down. There really isn't healing or spell slots to replenish. You do retain injuries though that require a consumable or rest to recover. In Hour 5, I'm gaining access to abilities that synergize together, and it's fascinating how I can combine them to amplify their effects. If I keep gaining abilities like I have in the early game, it's going to get crazy, stacking multiple abilities together to create some really powerful turns. I resolved the game's first conflict, gained access to roam space with a few quests, and was introduced to a system similar to Kingdom or Crusade management from the Pathfinder games, where people come to you with requests or pleas for help. As the fifth hour wraps up, I've barely scratched the surface. The Coronis Expanse lays open for exploration, my party is hitting its stride, and the game's systems are starting to take shape. I wasn't entirely sure Rogue Trader would hook me. A 100+ hour game that might face pacing issues, combat style reservations, and a lack of Warhammer knowledge had me worried. But Owlcat, you've done it again. The story, characters, and world building have reeled me in. You've even won me over with the combat, and this universe is a refreshing departure from the standard fantasy setting. Refreshing may be the wrong word here because this universe is brutal and deceptive, and I love it. Performance held up well, and I only faced minor achievement-related bugs and one where I had to load a save. Unfortunately, Owlcat is known for lots of bugs at launch, but they're also known for addressing them quickly. I'm hooked and eager to play more. I'm confident the story and characters will continue to get more interesting. I'm cautiously optimistic that the combat will remain exciting and scale through the playthrough, and as long as there aren't many pacing issues, I'm excited to play through this game, learn more about Warhammer, and come back with a full review.